Hey friends, I must just be in a talkative mood this week because here I am again. I wanted to come on here and talk about something that I think will give you an understanding of like where I'm coming from. In as far as like my own spiritual journey, and then also in as far as like sharing in that spiritual journey or sharing and healing with the other people I come in contact with, whether it's through Reiki or meditation or astrology, etc. And also to just kind of talk more about where I think the future of like this whole spirituality thing, I guess in terms of like culture, pop culture, is going, and like what we can do or what we maybe have an obligation to do. And what prompted me to kind of talk about this was actually, so I was listening to a podcast. This herbalist came on named Sarah Corbett. I've never heard of them until this podcast. I fuck with them heavy. I fuck with the podcast heavy. I'm going to follow their IG. They have a company called Rowan and Sage, so I'm going to follow them and see what they're all about. But I really just loved the perspective that Sarah brought about herbalism, and just like even in a wider sense of things. It was on the Living Open podcast actually, so yeah. But her perspective, she kind of touched on things that I have always felt, but from like a plant perspective in a way that I hadn't, like, it hadn't clicked for me before. And I was like, oh my God. And it just prompted me to want to bring this up to you. But she was talking about how she, in her practice with people, so she's an herbalist, so she will suggest certain herbs, tinctures, essential oils, I'm assuming, things like that to her clients, depending on what they're going through. But a lot of times she said she won't even like give the client a suggestion as far as like, you should ingest this, you should have a tea or a tincture, like you should consume this. She just wants them to like understand the energy of the plant. And that's how I took it to be, and I'm definitely paraphrasing, but that's what she was getting at. And it just made me, it really hit me because it really resonated with what I think oftentimes about how we have gotten so obsessed with the tools, the spiritual tools that people often use in this work, or this like dabbling, I guess. Maybe you're not doing spiritual work, but you're dabbling in it, whatever, like crystals, herbs, or for burning or for ingesting. Like sage is obviously a big one that you have probably heard of, or things like singing bowls even are becoming really popular. But yeah, mostly I'm thinking of herbs and crystals, things of that nature. And I think that people are so, like, the tools are fun to use, and it makes it like, I don't know, okay, let me say this. Tools are beautiful and wonderful, and there's a time and a place for them. But when she said that about plants, that she doesn't even always prescribe them for consumption, but to kind of understand the spirit of the plant. And she was talking a lot about ethics of using plants, and how using endangered plants is unethical. No matter how you cut it, no matter how a company is saying that they're like ethically sourcing it, it's like, no, if the plant is endangered, there's no ethical way of harvesting it. Like, just there isn't. And so it got me thinking about like our consumption and how we just like try to consume spirituality in these physical manifest ways, and how, one, that's not gonna get us where we want to be, and two, it isn't sustainable. And like, how long can we really go on with like spirituality being popular and becoming popular if we think that like we need amethyst to like open our crown chakra and our third eye, and like we need sage to clear the space, when like you don't actually really even know the history of sage or why it's used and where it grows and like all of these things. Like, people are just mindlessly consuming these things so they can feel filled up by like this purpose and this act of like being spiritual and connecting to themselves. And unless you're using those tools really intentionally, you're not connecting with yourself or the world around you. And so, one, it's not getting us where we need to be, and two, it's just not sustainable. Like, how long can we go on? Like if you think about how many plants go into making an essential oil, it's fucking insane. Like, essential oils, I have 2 right here, and these are the only ones that I've ever owned. Not that I don't think that essential oils are wonderful, and I think diffusers are amazing, and whatever, like, but I'm not like an essential oils freak or anything. I don't know that much about about them, but like, when you think of how many plants have to go in to make an essential oil, like, it's insane. And of course they have incredible healing benefits, and they're wonderful, and we can use them, but like, how often is really like sustainable and viable? And what she also mentioned was that, like, even though plants are so healing and they can help us with so many things, like, they're really under a lot of stress right now. Like, in the previous years, like, we have put so much stress on plants and like the consumption of them for our use. And so that's one reason why she doesn't always suggest the consumption of them, but the understanding of the energy, like meditating with their energy. And so anyways, where I'm getting with this is that, like, where I come from, my journey with spirituality, I guess, really started with, actually, funny enough, a music teacher that I had when I was like 12 actually ended up being way more than a music teacher to me, and she opened up a lot of ideas and concepts to me as far as like meditating and Reiki. Like, Reiki is one type of energy work, but she taught me how to she taught me energy work, not Reiki, but she taught me how to like harness that and meditate with that. And she did use crystals, like she did, and she would use different herbs. She taught me about sage and like rosemary and things like that, but those things never really stuck out to me as much as like the energy work and like just me and my body and the energy and like the other person, if I was working with another person. And then the next step kind of with that was yoga for me, which like that was a whole very long journey of me like discovering yoga and like diving deep into the concepts of it, and not even just the physical aspect, because there's way more to yoga than the physical aspect, but diving into all of what a lot of what that is, and getting my yoga training. And so it was like I spent so much time studying and working with just my body and just my breath. So I never even started using like crystals or herbs for clearing like spaces until like a couple years ago. I started dabbling with crystals, and I love my crystals. Like, I have a beautiful relationship with them, and crystals have incredible, wonderful vibrations that you can get really intimate with as all tools do when you're working with them intentionally. But like, I am of the mind, and another reason why I really fuck with her is because she said this too in the podcast, which was cool. And I know that she's not the only one who thinks this. I'm not the only one who thinks this, but I don't often hear it these days, is that like, I'm of the mind that all you need is you and your breath and your intention. Like, you can sit down to meditate and be surrounded by all these crystals, and if all you're doing is like sitting there and like hoping that it's working, and you're like distracted and you're kind of thinking about like, oh, what am I gonna do when this is over, and you're just like playing around with the crystals for like fun, like, and you're not actually being present in the moment and like present with your body and like doing that long enough and being quiet and receptive long enough to like develop a relationship with the crystal or the tool, like, you're not doing anything. And so I think that it's really important for people to develop a super strong foundation of it's just you. Like, you don't have any tools to rely on. It's just you and your God. Like, whether you're on a mat, like with your breath, whether you're sitting under a tree, whether you're sitting on an airplane, whether you're fucking going in the, like, grabbing shit in the grocery store, like, you are present in your body and in that moment, and you're using your breath and your mind, and all of those things are coming together, and that's all you got. Like, because if you don't have a strong foundation with just you, those tools aren't going to do anything for you. And once you do have that foundation, then yes, it's super fun and it's lovely to bring in tools and plants, because you, and then at that moment, you and the tool are really going to be able to develop a connection and like serve one another, because you've done the work to know what it feels like to rely on yourself and really sit deep within yourself and listen, because that's really what using tools is about, is like listening and kind of attuning with what they're trying to tell you. And if you're just like grabbing them for the sake of having them and whatever, and you're not even noticing that plants and stones and things have their own vibration and their own like personalities, honestly, and you're not like being quiet enough to like receive what that is and like appreciate it for what it is and know it for what it is, like, they're not going to do anything for you. So I think, yeah, that kind of goes into how using these tools inappropriately is not going to help us, and also it's not sustainable. And so I guess it's not sustainable because we can't all be like buying up essential oils and buying all these crystals and burning up all the sage and all the palo santo and all the like whatever it is, and like, how is that spiritual? Like, you're like completely ignoring the resources of the earth and the limits of that, and you're completely ignoring the people who either have made those practices known to you, like you know, cultures and groups who use white sage, for example. Like, you wouldn't even know about white sage if it wasn't for the legacy that they have created around white sage. And like, us consuming it and consuming it and consuming it is like so disrespectful to not only the earth but to those groups who have like really sat with that plant and like have come to understand it. And so yeah, we do harm to people. And also when we're consuming, like, then all these companies are like, okay, there's a huge market for lapis lazuli or amethyst or quartz or whatever, and so we have to make sure that we are like mining all these minerals and getting all these things so that we can get it to people. And like, when there's that demand like that, people aren't doing it ethically. Like, they're not treating the people who are mining the stones ethically. There's not enough of resources. Like, it's just, none of it is ethical. It's not ethical to the people involved. It's not ethical to the earth's resources. So it's not sustainable. And so I really feel like, to come full circle, sorry, Sagittarius Mercury, I can't be concise. When she mentioned that, that's one thing, sorry, I have hair on my face. One thing that when she sometimes doesn't even suggest the consumption of the plant, but she suggests the plant to the client so that they can kind of meditate on the relationship with that plant. I was like, bruh, that's the future. Like, it's cool, and it's fine that we're getting really familiar with all of these plants that can be of help to us. And it's cool that we're getting to know of all these stones that can be of use to us and things like that. But we really need to take this time to be super intentional with them and make sure that we're actually learning from them, because the future really is people understanding the essence of the thing enough to where they don't have to be like using the thing or consuming the thing all the time. Like, you may need, once you know more about herbs, and I'm not an expert in herbs like whatsoever, but say you feel like you need some essence in your life of like Damiana, and so you know about Damiana enough, and you've used Damiana enough, and you've sat with it enough and meditated with it enough and like listened to its messages. And if that seems a little like far out, I don't know, like, you absolutely can sit and meditate with plants. I think one really accessible way is to do it with teas, like meditating with a tea and the taste and the smell and the feel inside of you and the thoughts that come up. Like, that's one, I think, simple way. Or just like being like sitting next to that plant and just meditating next to it and listening to it. Like, so understanding the essence of the plant enough to where like you don't need to consume the plant to reap the benefits. You can meditate on the essence, like you can call in the essence of that plant. And of course, I'm not saying that, like, I mean, maybe, I don't know, like maybe you have a really bad stomach ache and so you call in the essence of mint. Like, you don't actually drink mint tea. I mean, maybe that would work for you, like calling in the essence of mint and meditating on it, and then your like stomach ache goes away. I don't know. I'm not like explicitly saying that, but what I am saying is that we need to understand these plants enough to where we're not so like reliant on consuming them and like expecting that we should be able to consume them and we should be able to use them, when all of us using them is putting them under stress. And like, it's really more about just understanding the essence of something, because at the end of the day, everything is in you. Like, all of the ways that you think rose quartz can help you, like, yes, rose quartz is a lovely support and like sidekick for you to access that loving, beautiful energy and like help you work through grief, and that's like a beautiful catalyst. But like, once you understand the intention of rose quartz, like, you don't need rose quartz to access that and like heal your own grief. Like, you just need you and your own personal understanding. So I really think that it's important for us to really, if you're going to use tools, be very intentional about them, be very ethical about them. And like, I think people are like, well, I don't know, it's hard to be ethical, and like, how do I know? Like do your research, like figure it out. Like, there are definitely sources and people out there who try to be absolutely as ethical as possible. And does that mean that you'll have to pay more? Yeah. Does that mean that you'll be able to use the thing less? Yeah. But what I'm telling you right now is that you don't even need those things to begin with. They're a lovely tool and sidekick and assist, but like, you don't need those things. So like, you can just know that you need to develop a solid foundation of like you and your breath and your intention and your presence. And then every once in a while you can splurge on an ethically sourced crystal or tea or something like, you know, some sort of tool that you feel drawn to. And so, yeah, it's easier to be ethical then because you know that you don't actually need it, and you can respect the process and respect the people who are doing the right thing to get that that crystal or that herb into the world and into the industry for your consumption. So, yeah, so right now, being really intentional with the tools that you use so that we can move towards being more ethical, and so that we all eventually lower our consumption, because we realize that you don't need anything. Like, you need you. Like, you don't need candles, you don't need like incense, you don't need these crystals, you don't need these herbs, you just need you. And the other things are fun and beautiful and enlightening to add every once in a while as an assistance. And if we're not using them all the time, the plants aren't stressed, the earth isn't stressed, we're not putting people in positions where they are sourcing things unethically, or they own a company where they're forcing people to source things unethically. And so we're just more responsible and more integratable. So yeah, this talk turned out to be a lot longer than I wanted it to be, but I just think that it's really important that we, like, spirituality is all about, like, spirituality, like living in alignment with like your true self is all about being integratable, and it's about doing the work. And people really want quick fixes, and they really want whatever's fun, and like of course living in alignment with your true self is fun, and of course spirituality is fun, like of course it's a beautiful thing. Like, you are curious and you're open and you're lighthearted and you're able to adapt to shit that comes at you. Like, being spiritual is being resilient. But of course there is also the flip side of that. Like, to really live in alignment with your true self, you have to peel back all of those layers to get there, and that's fucking traumatic and horrible and uncomfortable sometimes, because you lose people through that process, you lose yourself through that process, and then you find yourself. And so it's not like it's a walk in the park, but and there are obviously rewards when you do it, when you actually do it. But like, what I'm saying is that people just want shortcuts. Like, tools are appealing because people think that they can just, you know, like buy a stone and like put it in their pocket, and like abundance will just come to them, like, and spiritual enlightenment will just come to them. And it's like, it's just silly, and it's not helpful, and it's gonna hold people back until they really are like, damn, I really do need to do this work. And I just feel like all the tools create so much clutter and so much noise and so much distraction from the actual purpose. And like, yes, I could launch into a whole other discussion about how those tools are a distraction, and it's great for capitalism because then we buy all these things and we like spend all this money, which is great for capitalism, but we don't actually move anywhere with our spiritual development, which would probably help us move away from capitalism. But we aren't ready for that today. But yeah, just I entreat you to try not using tools for a while. Like, try, if you're like, if like connecting to yourself through meditation, for example, or just being more present in yourself is something that's newer to you, I would really suggest just don't use any tools. Like, get familiar with you, because it's like science, it's like variables, right? Like a scientist has a hypothesis, they decide to do an experiment, they're only going to move like or change one variable at a time, otherwise how do you know what works and what doesn't work? Like you can't start your spiritual journey and like you're meditating, you're using this crystal, you're using this herb, you're using all these things, like how do you even know what you're really tracking and relying on? And like start with you. So like just start with you, start with being with yourself in the moment. And it's not going to be comfortable and it's not going to be fun sometimes, but like that's how then it eventually it is. And then eventually it's so gratifying and wonderful, and you get to say like I created this feeling within myself. Like no one else did that, like no tools did that, like just me sitting here under this tree, under this beautiful tree, or me sitting on my mat. Like I created this safe space within myself. I created this container where I sit honestly and presently with myself and with what's going on around me. And from there, I have grown so much as a person, and I've enlightened myself so much, and I react to things in life differently. I interact with people differently, and you are so much more receptive and open and beautiful and caring and conscious and present, and like you did that, you know, you were responsible for that. And then after that you can start like dabbling with tools, and then even then, you know, you don't really need to, because you just tapped into their essence and you have yourself, which is the most important tool. So yeah, I feel like I could go on about this forever, but it's already been a long time and I didn't mean to talk for that long. But yeah, Sarah Corbett, Rowan and Sage, she was on the podcast that I mentioned earlier. I didn't know about her before this podcast, but she seems super cool, so I'm definitely going to listen to, or I'm definitely going to follow them on social media. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. But I hope you have a great day, and I hope that you, I don't know, move forward and feel that you can just kind of like work on feeling empowered just within yourself, I think is what I want this essence of this message to be. So yeah, peace.